back to the Out of the Box show with me and my good friend Joey Jackson's with me this afternoon. Hope you all are having a wonderful and safe Memorial Day weekend. And we're delighted to be back here. What is this? Number four, Joey, for us?
That's right. Four and counting.
Four and counting. And, every week the numbers are growing. People are catching on and joining in with us to talk about some of the latest and very important topics that's going on around the country. So I'm delighted to be back here with my friend Joey, and we're going to have a good time for the next 30 minutes. And we got a special guest today for everyone that's out there. You know, in light of all the controversy that's been around the Aubrey shooting down in Brunswick, Georgia, there in the state of Georgia, a lot of the concerns around training and accreditation around that police department has certainly come into question. And I have the fortune of having my good friend on today, someone I worked with when I was public safety director there in DeKalb County, the former post director, which, if you don't know, is Police Officer Standards and Training. I want to introduce to everyone, for those of you who may not be familiar with him, Ken Vance. And Ken comes to us as an outstanding retired law enforcement person, 44 years as a lawman across the state of Georgia and in the Carolinas as well, and worked in a variety of different positions. And I'm just so delighted to have had the opportunity to work with him when I was public safety director there in DeKalb. And we had an opportunity to share a lot of discussions and to establish a relationship with each other that is going to be long-standing. But Ken is retired now and living his best life, and we still have an occasion to talk to each other. But I want to bring Ken in, Joey, because of the role that he played to really kind of explain to the audience a little bit of what police officer standards and training is, what it means, how important it is for police officers in Georgia and across the United States. And Ken served in that role for 12 and a half years under 3 different governors, I believe. And he is the most long-standing post director in the history of the state of Georgia. So I am just delighted to have you, Ken. Welcome. And just want you to just tell us a little bit about what it is that you did do over the past number of years in your career and how relevant it is and important it is in the role that you played.
Well, Dr. Alexander, when I started Post, I told Governor Perdue I wanted to reestablish the credibility of the regulatory agency for all law enforcement in Georgia. That not only includes local police and sheriff's deputies, it also included State Patrol, GBI, corrections, juvenile justice, Port Authority. If you wore a badge in Georgia, it came through Peace Officer Standards and Training. And I also tried to tell people that we were in the enabling business. We enabled you into law enforcement, and if you messed up, we did our best to try to enable you out.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, you know, there's a lot of issues that are going on around the country today. Of course, the case there in South Georgia, and then there's another case up in Louisville, Kentucky, that brings a lot of issues around training and supervision into question. But it's just not in those particular 2 states, but it's also around the country. And I can tell you, being a former chief of police myself, I certainly do understand the value of training and understand how important that it is for the American people in which we serve, also to value, to understand and value training. But I think it's just so important that the community hear from someone like yourself, Ken, to kind of help us better understand what goes on in training, what is the importance of it. And I think too, Joey, and I know, Joey, you may have a couple of questions to throw at Ken, but I just think it's just so important to have you on and to share some of those things with you. Joey, you got some thoughts?
Yeah, I do agree. So listen, we welcome you here, Ken. Thank you so much. I just want to say a couple other things besides my esteemed colleague and cohort, Dr. Alexander, said. The first thing was in terms of you, retiring and living your best life. We know that you've been living your best life long before retirement. That's number one. And number two, on the issue of retirement, we know you law guys never retire. You always have, so much. You're so active and you're out there and doing great things. And certainly helping all of us. And so that's very significant. Indeed. So, Ken, I guess the thing that's important to me is obviously, there's been a lot happening now. And I guess I wanted to start with the issue on everyone's mind. And I guess just in terms of policing in general, we know you go through a lot. My dad, may he rest in peace, he was a police officer. And in many respects, police are in the crosshairs and crossfires because not only is it a dangerous job, but when things happen and they go amiss, you get much of the blame. So I guess, as it related to, and I know you're a narcotics guy, everybody should know a couple of things. Number one, he wore those boots in Arkansas. You know how those state troopers do in Arkansas when they coming after you, or in every state. Right, you wore them boots and that nice leather jacket, and then of course
Sam Brown outfit, man.
You see, and then in Florida also, I know you did a lot of narcotics work, and I know that's not easy work; it's very dangerous work. And I guess I wanted to just pivot, if I could, on the issue of Breonna Taylor. We know she was killed in her own home. Dr. Alexander has shed a lot of light on the case. He's a law enforcement guy. He has a lot of credentials and past experience. But I just kind of wanted to get your take on that. You know that obviously she was shot because they were executing a warrant and going into her home. So what can we do from a policing perspective, perhaps to tighten up, the issues around going in, executing these warrants, and ensuring that, yes, police are safe, but that the people who they're policing are safe as well?
A lot of times, Mr. Jackson, is we get in too much of a hurry. We get in too much of a hurry on things, and when you hurry on stuff like this, search warrants, arrest warrants, where you have to go in and physically take somebody, you better have your act down before you get there, or little things can cause big mistakes. I think sometimes, and having been a lawman for 44 years, I understand how it happens. That doesn't make it right. That just means I understand it. Now, in the case up in Louisville, a little extra time, a few more hours to get your things, get everything straightened out, get all your angles covered. I think there might have been a better outcome. That's my opinion. I wasn't there. And I'll always err on the side of officer discretion. Don't get me wrong. But sometimes we get in so much of a hurry to do something is we miss those little things that turn into monumental mistakes.
Yeah, I absolutely concur with you on that. I know obviously it's very difficult, but when you rush, it certainly leads to other problems. And there's enough problems in community. We need a bridge gap, obviously, between law enforcement and communities to ensure that there's a cooperative effort. I guess the next thing I want to go to before I turn it back to my good friend, Dr. Alexander, is just the issue of police writing with each other. And when I say that, oftentimes, when things are evaluated, and I don't want to put all police in one lump group, but there are issues now concerning whether or not, police may have said anything to cover up for another officer. And I think it happens in many instances where you're seeing perhaps a police officer writing up for someone else, right? So what can we do about that? Or what can you do in a supervisory capacity to make sure that the police are just forthright and honest with respect to what they see and when they see it?
Okay. That's a big question, and I'm going to try to give you a small answer. And you're referring a little bit to the thing down there in Glenn County, Georgia. Retired is not the same as on the job. Yes, there are places where retired people can get training and stay current, but that's not on the job. Again, I go back to the timing of things like this. Training is absolutely important. And if you look at the record of the people involved in this that were certified officers, you'll see that maybe their training was lacking for several years. And the thing about it, sir, is again, you get too fast, you get too emotional, you make too many mistakes, and mistakes cause very bad ends, sometimes loss of life, and a lot of times loss of taxpayer dollars when the civil suit comes back.
That's for sure. A lot of dollars there. Doc, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, well, just in addition, I think, to what Ken is conveying, I want to add to, I have always been, even on this show and even on other shows I've had the privilege to be on, I have always emphasized the importance of training. You can never get enough training, particularly in the police profession itself, because so much changes so quickly. Things happen very quickly, and I agree with Ken Vance as well too. Is that preparation, planning, execution of whatever it is that you're doing is totally important, because you got to make sure you're at the right house at the right time. You got to be able to say you surveilled that residence and have a pretty good idea of who's on the inside and who's not. But a lot has to go into it. So more recently, from what I'm reading, Louisville has done some things to make sure this type of incident doesn't happen again, where you have search warrants that are being executed, because I think those who are at the highest ranks of that organization need to make sure that their signature is on it, it's been vetted properly, and that that judge has a clear indication of what it is that he or she is signing off on as well. These unfortunate incidents, but I certainly do agree with you, Ken, that training is paramount, and continued training is paramount. You and I have talked a lot about that over the years. And I just want to thank you wholeheartedly for being able to be here with us today, because your insight is so important. And I think more importantly, for people to hear it from you, the importance of training. And I'm going to end here, but Ken, if you got any closing remarks, please.
Well, I want to say this. Dad Bernard, it makes me angry sometimes that we paint all law enforcement officers with a similar brush. 98.5% of all law enforcement officers try to do it right. They really do. They're under an extreme amount of stress for a job that doesn't pay as much as a school teacher, and they're asked to make split-second decisions. Training is everything. Training keeps you current. But please, 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 I would ask the public, don't paint all of us with the same brush, because the vast, vast majority of people like Cedric Alexander, like folks all over Georgia and all over America, are doing exactly the thing they're supposed to do in the way they're supposed to do it.
Yeah.
So, Ken, before we let you go, Ken, I have a question for you. And that is that what can we do to bridge the gaps between police and communities? You mentioned 98 point something percent of officers do things the right way. There'd be a large amount of people out there that disagree with you and say that there are too many officers who do things the wrong way, who don't respect communities, who don't respect people, who escalate situations as opposed to de-escalate them. I'm not saying anything you don't know or haven't heard. So I guess what I would like you to answer is, what can we do to bridge that gap, to bridge the divide, to have people feel comfortable around the police, that they're not hunting us, but they're protecting us, that they're not over policing communities, but they're adding protection to communities? What is the 1, 2, or 3 things that we can do to add value to make it work so that neighborhoods feel safe and they feel officers are working for them and with them?
Good question. And I got 3 answers for you. Policing's kind of like preaching. Good police officers are the ones that are called to be in that line of work. Pay them like they're supposed to be. Train them like they're supposed to be. And then I would ask that officers sometimes take that extra minute or 30 seconds to listen to what's going on with that person, rather than saying, here's what I want you to do, and I want you to do it now. I'm either going to hook you up with a taser, I'm going to go to something else. Patience a little bit. There are times, most times you can have patience. There are certain times I've been shot at in my life. That wasn't a time I could have a lot of patience. But when you can have patience and you can listen to somebody, do that. But get your best people, just like you want as a school teacher, you want them as a law enforcement officer. Get the best people you can, pay them appropriately, train them appropriately, and they'll do good things for you.
I think that's a great way to put it, and appreciate you, respect all the work that you do, Mr. Ken Vance, and thank you for your service. Not an easy job.
Yeah.
Thank y'all so much for having
No,
me.
thank you
God
for
bless
being
you all.
with you, my friend.
Yes,
Absolutely.
sir.
All right.
Indeed. All right, Doc, take it away. I know we got other good topics that we need to address here, and why don't we start with the church's reopening? I know we got to pray. We got to make sure we're good. We got to say our prayers. We got to, be thankful and grateful, but we want to be thankful and grateful responsibly. And so I guess I'll start by throwing it back to you with regard to your thoughts about opening churches, the manner in which they should open, and whether or not it's safe or now is the appropriate right time to open them.
Well, I would say what I've always said, Joey, is that we have to follow the science. And I certainly do pay a lot of attention to what our scientists are saying in this country, but we also have to balance that with some other parts and be cognizant, which we all are, that we are the United States of America. People want to get back out. People want to get into their houses of worships. And I would just say, my thought is this: look, coronavirus is still here. It's going to be with us for a while, and we're going to have to learn how to live around it and with it until there's a vaccine or some treatment that comes along. And even when it comes to our houses of worship, for those who choose to go back, and I think that has to be an individual decision. But hopefully these churches will make sure that when they open, they will separate people in some type of way. They will encourage the use of masks, and we follow the same science that the scientists' recommendations that we do anywhere else. Because people have raised some interesting points, and one being, well, why can't I go to church with folks if I can go into Walmart? And that raises an interesting question. But there are two things I'd say to that. One, you're going to be confined into a closed place for some period of time inside a church. And two, you're probably going to be in much closer proximity. And three, it becomes important if we choose to go inside a church, and this is just my thought, Joey, is that we have to make sure we wear our masks, try to distance ourselves, and just be very cognizant of all the things that we have been taught and been suggested to us to do in order to keep ourselves safe and to keep this virus from spreading. So those that are going back to church, God bless them, but do so with caution. Yes, God is there. Jesus will bless you. But he's also telling us, these are the things we want you to do. You got to help me, help you stay safe. And we have to do that in our houses of worship as we do anywhere else as this country continues to open up. That's just my thought, Joey.
I think it's a great thought. I want Chris, our producer, great producers, great people behind the show. Doctor and I are the, face perhaps, but we have Chris and Sarah back there. There were some comments that you all made that I'd like Chris to put back up on the screen, because I think they're compelling. And why don't we start with this one? Karen Farnell says, churches can open. I don't have to go. I pray every day at home. God bless you, Karen. Listen, I pray too. Churches, and that's my, sentiment. That's one of my sentiments. Before you put up the next one, let me say this. It's so true. And here's the reality. The reality is that, look, we can go to church, and you should go to church, and please go to church and worship and do your thing. Do it safely, as Dr. Cedric said, with your PPE on, etc. But remember that we're not limited to going to church by giving thanks and praise. You can give thanks and praise in your bedroom. You can give it in your living room, in your dining room. You can give it in your backyard. And so church is we're not limited there. But I think, Karen, that's a great thing. And Yolanda, I see you gave me the amen. And in addition, many other comments with regard to common sense. Here we have from Barbara, praying and worship in the confines of our own homes. Look, we can do it, right? And I never like to think that the Lord Jesus Christ is upset with me because of the fact that I'm praying, but I'm not praying at his house. I'm praying at my house, which he's very much a part of. And so I think it's important that in all we do, and thank you for your comments, keep them coming in, that we just know that we do it safely. And so, Betty Brown, we are the church and can worship God anywhere. And that's so true. In your car, wherever you go. So again, I'm not taking anything away from those of you who are going back to church. Just make sure you do your social distancing, put on your mask, be safe, be careful, and, just show God you love him, give your tithe, but just do it in the right way. Follow the science and the CDC guidelines. Cheryl DeWitt, I'm with you. Cheryl, just such a smart person. And indeed, I think that's what we all have to do if we're going to get to that place where we don't revisit this again. Because one of the things, last thing I'll say, Doc, and I'm very concerned about, is that this thing comes back at us because we're out there. And when we come back out there, and thank you, Anna, for your kind words about it being very well said. But, look, the bottom line is that I just don't want it to come back, Doc, right? We've been through heck and back. And boy, oh boy, it's been nice to be home. It's been a beautiful place to be. Those meals my wife makes are to die for. But listen, I don't want to be stuck here because of a virus situation. So that's
right. So I mean, the country is opening back up. We're opening back up slowly and cautiously, and in some parts of the country, we are seeing slight increases of the infection. However, each part of the country is very different, and each part of the country, each community, every state is going to have to look at its own data and examine it and make adjustments accordingly. But I just pray for all of us here that we just use good judgment. And there's still a lot of people out there, Joey, who are running around in large crowds without masks, without social distancing, and don't give any appearance of taking any precaution, and we're a long way from that. So as our churches reopen, as our business reopen, I just think it's just so hugely important that we keep these recommendations in mind. And I guess this is a good time too, Joey, to kind of move into the next topic for us, and that is this whole Memorial Day weekend, and how do we plan to spend it, and how do we stay safe during this 3-day weekend that we have? Because I'm gonna tell you, I've gotten some video from right here in Florida, certain parts of the states where, man, you got a lot of young people out there. They're just not adhering to the call at all. And it's just not young people. I'm seeing middle-aged folks as well too, who can be a little bit more cautious and set a little bit better examples. And yeah, Barbara, I saw what happened down there in Myrtle Beach. I also saw what happened over in Volusia County and several other places. And we really just have to be very mindful of it, because I think you can go out and have a great time over the holiday, but we can't forget the things that we have come accustomed to hearing so much, and that's washing your hands, social distancing, wearing your mask, being conscious, being cognizant of where we are and what we're doing.
I completely agree, Doc. So, before we're going to get to questions too. So we added a new segment. If anybody has any questions, think about what they can be, because we're going to spend the last few minutes of the program today just answering your questions or any concerns you might have. But I guess the one thing that I wanted to ask you about, Doctor, before we transition to that, was what Memorial Day means to you. I mean, you're a man about service. I know, you're a man of great faith. You're a person who served in public service. You're a person who's done so many things. And we know the sacrifices that so many have made and so many have fallen for this country so that we can have this beautiful democracy and this beautiful experiment. And we can have the right to have freedoms of speech and of expression and all the things that we have as we honor, those, again, who are fallen in all branches of services and, of course, their families. But I was very curious, Doctor, what it meant to you, Memorial Day, based upon all you have done and all you have meant to so many people.
Well, it's really probably one of the more touching holidays for me, Joey, because when we think about our men and women, particularly and specifically those who serve in our military in this country and around the globe, and who's serving right now, keeping our borders safe and keeping our communities safe, and there is no rest for them. They're constantly on guard and on alert, and I salute them today for the great work that they have always done and have continued to do, and those who are losing their lives in defense of this country and who serve in our military, and also our men and women who serve here at home in the reserves, and our men and women who serve in public safety and law enforcement, who keeps our streets and communities safe in the challenging job that they have, and always reminding ourselves that in order to have good public safety, you have to have good policing and good communities that are working together. But there's some new heroes that are on the horizon that we have certainly heard a lot about, Joy, and that's the men and women who work in the healthcare profession. They themselves who are serving at this very moment 10 and 12 and 15, 16 hours shift taking care of those who are stricken with this horrible virus. And we cannot forget any of the heroes, all the men and women who serve. But those in our military, this is their day. It's special for them. And we must never forget. And every time we see a military person, every time we see a person serving others, let's salute them. Let's give them our thanks. And let's uh, always be reminded that as they wear those uniforms and as they serve us in this country and abroad, I love our military and I love this country. And I think it's important for all of us, in spite of what we think of what we may feel, we still are in a country here where we have a number of freedoms in which we all fight to protect. So
Amen.
let's not forget our hospital workers, our environmental specialists that work in these hospitals as well. Thank you, Michelle, for reminding me of that. And also for the children who parents, who mothers and fathers who are out serving away from their families. We pray for you and we bless you. And we constantly salute all our essential workers who are out there, and those who have lost their lives protecting us and keeping us safe during this horrific time that we live in. I salute them all, Joy. God bless them. And I just can't find enough words to say.
Well, the words you said are perfect words, and I think they go to, certainly your tremendous spirit and the values that you have now, and your understanding that we're a better place because of the sacrifices they made. And so, again, Memorial Day, we just want everybody to be safe, and we want to remember those who made it really possible for us to have the things we have and the ability to do the things we do. And those are the fallen heroes that are out there. And so, Doc, I said we were going to open it up for questions in the few minutes we have, and I wanted to ask you a question. I get the benefit of asking the first question, and that first question is a very obvious one. I know you're a man who works day and night. You write books that are fabulous. You look at policy. You help law enforcement do a better job, and therefore protect the public that they serve, particularly in our communities. You're working day and night. I know you have your fabulous, 83-year-old mom that you take care of and other things. What I want to know, Doc, is what you're going to do for you on this Memorial Day weekend.
I'm doing it, Joey. And I think we both are doing it. And that is serving. And even though I'm retired after 40 years as a professional lawman, as a psychologist, I'm still serving. And for me, service gives me life. That's what gives me breath to breathe. And it's what you do very well. And it's what millions of Americans do across this country. And for some of us, there is a retirement. And for some of us, there is no such thing. So I'm retired from someone's job, but I'm not retired from life. I'm not retired from serving. And there are millions of Americans out there who feel the same way. And that's really what keeps us going as a nation every day. So that's my answer. Let's take some questions from anyone out there that may have in the few minutes we have left.
So I saw my friend Rick Martin. Rick is a dynamite individual, and he just gave us props over there. And so, Rick, I hope you and your family are well, and I hope everybody's family is doing well. In the 1 minute that I have left, Cedric, I guess I'll say the following. Maybe we just won't get an opportunity to take questions today. We'll do it moving forward. But there are times to reflect, and I think that this whole pandemic has caused a lot of reflection. It's caused a lot of reflection in terms of the perspective we have, how grateful we are for our freedoms, how grateful we are for our liberty, how grateful we are to be able to move about free and unimpeded, to go to a restaurant, to go to a church, to be on public transportation, to be in a subway, to be on a bus, right? To be in our cars going wherever we want, to be able to move away, from our homes and come back to our homes. So it gives us perspective, but we wouldn't have that perspective without those who have made it possible and the heroes of our territory. So I thank you for that. And, with that, Doc, that's what I have to say to close. I just wish, you obviously, your mom, your family, those close to you and those you love, and all the rest of you out there. I thank you for joining us, being with us, and just stay safe and healthy.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all for joining. And please tell your friends, share with them that every Sunday, 3 o'clock Eastern, 2 p.m. Central, Joy and I will be here to talk about the more relevant issues that are going on around the country. And it's not fun if you're not here with us. So thank you all. Thank you again, Joey. Good seeing you. I'm getting up your way.
Good man.
Things calm down a little bit. We're going to do like we always. We're going to chop it up in person. Thank you, everyone. Have
Chop it up.
Wonderful Memorial weekend. Love you all. See you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.